when the Warriors do some of what I ask of them. Not all, but just some good things tend to happen for this team. Welcome back to the channel. As always, if you are new, please be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell and the like button. Now let's get straight to it. I was relatively shocked when I saw the starting lineup for the Warriors against the Timberwolves. Steve Kerr actually elected to go to a bit of a bigger lineup, benched Buddy Hield. Finally, thank the heavens, he benched Buddy Hield and stuck Gui Santos into the equation so that you have some combination of Gui Santos and Andrew Wiggins at the power forward spot. But really, it was more like Gui Santos at the power forward spot, and the Warriors immediately got off to a really good start. 8-0. Next thing you know, they had all the momentum in the world on both ends of the floor. Gui actually scored 5 of the team's first 8 points. And the Timberwolves could get absolutely nothing going on their offensive end. Next thing you know, in the blink of an eye, the Warriors have a 23-5 lead with 3.5 minutes to go in the first quarter. Next thing you know, the score is 26-5 with 3.5 minutes to go in the first quarter. And ultimately, the final score in that first quarter was 34-12. 34-12. So the first segment of the first quarter, the Warriors run their typical motion offense stuff, and then in the second half of the first quarter, Steph Curry goes on a bit of a flurry to protect an early 4-guard lineup, and the Warriors kinda had no choice but to do that in this game because they were literally out of bodies. Slo-Mo did not play. Draymond did not play. Obviously, they've been without Jonathan Kuminga. He's not a 4 anyway. And next thing you know, the Warriors don't really have anybody else but a bunch of guards coming off their bench. And to be even further fair to Steve Kerr tonight, he took Lindy Waters out of the equation and ran a 9-man rotation. If Lindy Waters was in the rotation, well, they would have had 4 guards coming off their bench in that scenario. And interestingly enough, to begin the second quarter, Kerr did something that I've never seen before. He actually put all the starters back into the game to begin the second quarter. The Timberwolves went on a run, and the Warriors starters got slightly outplayed in that stretch. But if Steve stuck with a 4-guard lineup to begin that second quarter, the results would have been much worse. And you know, I just have to say, Gui Santos is a real asset for the Warriors moving forward. He gives them versatility both as a stretch power forward and as a bigger small forward. Now there's an option to always keep the Warriors connected on both ends of the floor with Gui's ability to stretch the floor, make sound decisions with the ball in terms of passing it, and giving them good positional size and better positional size at the power forward spot. And he really has the potential to unlock a lot of things for this team when everybody comes back. And you know, it's not like the Warriors were playing an easy team tonight. The Timberwolves had won 4 of their last 5 games, so they were actually streaking coming into this one. Shoot, they were actually almost on a 5-game winning streak, but they lost a nail-biter against the Grizzlies. They lost by 2 in that game. But yes, as you saw in this one, the combination of Andrew Wiggins, Gui Santos, and Trayce Jackson-Davis were a really viable defensive combination, while also being really solid on the defensive end of the floor. Now imagine when Draymond is available and Kuminga is available, and the Warriors decide to run a lineup that's more like Kuminga at the 3, Santos at the 4, and Draymond at the 5, and that's the kind of lineup that is more survivable when you're trying to run some of those smaller lineups. And then you can try to stick Wiggins at the 2. I don't know if Steve Kerr will ever make that move. But there is more spacing on the floor with Gui Santos now available to them. An extra rebounder next to Draymond on top of that, absolute hustler, absolute connector. And all you can really do is pray that when those guys come back, that Gui Santos doesn't lose his place in the rotation. And that is the biggest concern of all. Because when all the guards return, when Podziemski comes back, is Gui Santos going to take a seat once again? And how silly would that be? Because Pods is a connector, but he's a 2. The Warriors have a ton of 2s coming off their bench as it is, so they need another guy at a different position with much bigger size that can space the floor and all these things while being a connector, and that is literally Gui Santos. And let me quickly just say, the Boston Celtics lost to the Raptors tonight. The Raptors beat the Warriors the game before, and we're just like, this is a team that has won 1 game in over a month, and that is just the most pathetic loss ever. But the fact that they were able to beat a team like the Celtics also shows you that with a fuller roster, perhaps the Raptors will be competitive moving forward as well. So we don't have to feel that badly about the fact that the Warriors were not able to win that game. So in this game, we saw a glimpse of what the Warriors could look like for the remainder of the season as they start to get bodies back. But of course, hilariously enough, the Warriors at some point had a 24-point lead in this game. And they ended up winning this game barely by a single point. It is just absolutely comical how easy it is for this team to blow 20-point leads like it is absolutely nothing. But I have to say, man, the manipulation by the NBA, the referees, is just getting absolutely comical. The Timberwolves had 20 free throws in the third quarter to help them come back into this game. And it was just kind of blatant. The refs were giving all and every call that you can imagine to the Timberwolves. Some of the notable calls that I can remember: Dennis Schroeder pokes the ball from behind against Dante DiVincenzo. The ref that's on the other side has no angle to be able to see whether Schroeder actually reached in or not, but she decides to make the call anyway. The replay showed there was no contact when Schroeder poked the ball away, but he made incidental contact with the armpit before he got to the ball. And even though the Warriors challenged the play, the refs gave it to the Timberwolves anyway because of that incidental contact that was shown on the replay, not because there was an actual foul on the ball. There was another play where a lob was thrown to Gobert. GP2 came from behind and knocked the ball away perfectly. No contact whatsoever, and they called a foul anyway. Can't even challenge it because, like I said, they blew the first challenge. And then there's another one in the middle of that fourth quarter where Jaden McDaniels throws his whole body into Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder's just standing like this. He gets moved because he's like half the size of McDaniels. And then the ref decides to call a foul on Dennis Schroeder and fouls him out of the game. For a chunk of this game, the Timberwolves were lapping the Warriors in getting to the free throw line. At some point, the Warriors had 20 fouls while the Timberwolves had 10. And at some point, the Timberwolves had 13 fouls versus the Warriors having 26 fouls. The overall picture will show that the Timberwolves had 17 fouls to the Warriors' 26 fouls. But that's only because the Timberwolves had to intentionally foul the Warriors a bunch of times towards the end of the game. And this blatant fixing, man, on top of having to deal with all the Steve Kerr nonsense and then having to deal with a bunch of ref manipulation at the same time, is just very, very overwhelming. But for once, the Warriors made just enough clutch shots to overcome it all. It took them having a 24-point lead early on to hold on for dear life. And that is thanks to the fact that the game was started with Gui Santos at the 4 instead of Buddy Hield being in there and forcing Andrew Wiggins to the 4, man. I promise you, if Buddy Hield started once again at the 3, putting Andrew Wiggins at the 4, the Warriors were 1000% going to lose this game. I don't know what possessed Kerr and the coaching staff to decide to stick Gui Santos into the starting lineup, but they finally did it and it got them a win. Thank you very much. Now let's quickly get to some of the individual performances. Steph Curry with a hell of an effort, 31 points, 7 threes hit on 12 attempts, 8 assists, only 1 turnover. When Steph Curry is your primary creator as a scorer and as a distributor, that is the best chance the Warriors are going to have every single night to win any given game. That is only on the offensive end of the floor. When Steph Curry is more aggressive, on the ball more, and creating for his team one way or another, it is going to yield much better results for this team. Andrew Wiggins, who was struggling from the field, 6 of 16 shooting, got aggressive in that third quarter, shot 10 of 12 from the free throw line. He's been pretty amazing from the free throw line this season, considering he's a career 72% shooter from the free throw line. He's often avoided attacking the basket because he's afraid to go to the free throw line over the years. But he's made a tweak in his mechanics and he's been better than ever this season. He's nearly 79% from the free throw line this season, and he shot 10 of 12 tonight, including hitting 2 giant clutch free throws in a 1-point game situation with the game on the line. Very, very gutsy performance from him. I just wish he would stop stepping out of bounds from the three-point line. He did it twice tonight, and he's done it a various number of times this season. I think the Warriors should fine players whenever they step out of bounds from the three-point line. A $5,000 fine for every time a player steps out of bounds after catching the ball from the three-point line, man. That just cannot be happening on a regular basis. Gui Santos, 5 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists in just 21 minutes of play. He couldn't play more because he got into foul trouble, and that was highly unfortunate. That forced the Warriors to go smaller than they should. And you know, it was really driving me crazy. Steve Kerr elected to close this game with a 3-guard lineup. Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, and GP2. Instead of sticking Gui Santos back into the game, it's like he forgot that Gui Santos existed. Had he simply benched either a Buddy or GP2 and stuck Gui Santos into that lineup, the Warriors simply would have had a much easier time of taking care of business so that it doesn't come all the way down to the wire. Trayce Jackson-Davis, once again, not much of a showing from a scoring standpoint, just 4 points on 2 of 7 shooting from the field. He actually had to take a couple of jump shots with the shot clock running out a couple of times. And he just hasn't really been getting much of an opportunity on that end of the floor. They never call any plays for him. They're essentially using him like his name is Kevon Looney. And that's just the way Steve Kerr loves to use all of his bigs. He wants them to do nothing but set screens, box out and rebound. That's really all he wants from his bigs. But as I mentioned in the previous game, Trayce has been playing with a lot of force. He has been ferocious defending and rebounding and setting better screens. And those are winning plays and really vital for the Warriors to be able to remain strong from a defensive standpoint. He really held it down tonight. 15 rebounds and 2 blocks. He had 9 at the halftime. Against the Pacers a couple of games ago, he actually had 10 rebounds at halftime. So he is really rebounding at an elite rate. As long as he continues to take care of business as the anchor of this team, everything else will come to him as the bigger bodies return to rotation. As stated, Buddy Hield came off the bench and actually had a pretty good game. 18 points, had some defensive numbers as well, 3 steals and 2 blocks. An anomaly where he has an overall good game on both ends of the floor. And here's a really interesting stat. When Buddy Hield scores at least 18 points for the Warriors, they are now 10-0. It's really unfortunate that the Warriors have to rely so heavily on a guy who is so inconsistent. But for at least one game, he came through. And with that, and the Suns losing a game and the Spurs losing a game, the Warriors are back in the 10th seed. Riveting stuff. What a wild situation it is indeed. I mentioned in the previous video that there were rumors of the Suns being interested in Nick Richards, and indeed, they picked him up today through a trade, and now the Suns will have Nick Richards. They will have more size, more defense, more finishing ability. We'll see how that trade helps the Suns. But ultimately, I just cannot emphasize enough that the Warriors are much better than what they've been over the last month and a half when they simply use bigger lineups, man. Just use bigger lineups and you will win a lot more games and show the world that you're nowhere near as bad as you've shown to be. I mean, think about it, right? The Warriors, when Draymond comes back, when Kuminga comes back, they can use their regular rotation where the starters usually get off to a good start with a Wiggins, Draymond, and Trayce combination. And then again, when Steve Kerr wants to go smaller, he can actually go to a Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, Gui Santos, and Draymond lineup. And I really believe that that lineup will be pretty capable compared to any of the other iterations of the small lineups that Steve Kerr has tried to use over the last 20 plus games. The only question remains, will he actually use it? Does he have the stones to sit out one of his guards, be it Moses Moody, GP2, Pods, whoever it may be, to ensure that Gui Santos is in the rotation so that he can go with bigger lineups? And if he can unlock some of those lineups, then the Warriors can go out and get a trade for an actual starting shooting guard so that you can place Dennis Schroeder as a backup point guard, as a 6-man, or use him as a trade piece to go get a viable, actual starting shooting guard. Schroeder has an expiring contract of $13 million. If they can use him and a few other contracts to acquire somebody like Zach LaVine, suddenly the Warriors would have Steph Curry, Zach LaVine, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond, Trayce, Kuminga, Gui Santos, Slo-Mo, Looney, and some other guys. I don't know who else you would have to add, be it Kevon Looney, GP2, maybe the both of them. But they really need to fix the shooting guard situation. Preferably, they could get at least 2 small guys off this team. You have just got to take Steve Kerr's toys away. But that's essentially really the only hope that's left for the Warriors, is either take away Steve Kerr's toys as much as possible, because there is a winning group here. It's just being completely masked by Steve Kerr's inability to figure it out. So obviously I haven't touched on this at all in this video, but Steph Curry, Steve Kerr, and Draymond have collaborated over the last couple of days or so, talking about the future, and they shouldn't give up everything now for the sake of the future after these 3 people are long gone. And it's just the most ridiculous narrative I've ever seen. Even national media has picked up on it at this point. And I'm pretty much fully convinced that Steve Kerr has brainwashed Steph Curry into thinking whatever Steve says is somehow accurate, and it just isn't. But obviously we're pretty far into this video, and I'm gonna have to cover that topic in a separate video. Anyway, that's all I can cover for today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, stay tuned. Plenty of more content to come. Until next time.